So the first tip I want to talk about is monitoring. So basically I think there's two approaches to it aside from not caring about it, which I wouldn't suggest. So the first one is objective monitoring, which aims for translation and like setting like a blank canvas for sound, so that if you, for example, if you mix on headphones, it will translate well to good speakers and hopefully like decently enough to some not so good speakers. And also there's like some standards in headphones, like many of them follow the Harman curve to some extent at least. I will make a whole video about flatness and stuff related to that, but I won't go too deep into it right now. So basically that's the first approach. The second approach is to make an EQ that if you listen to some songs that you like, you EQ while listening to them to make them sound as good to you as possible. So that's the other approach, and I've done both of these myself. Right now I'm doing the first approach. Yeah. So how I'm doing this right now is I'm using Equalizer APO. It's free. And then I use AutoEQ.app website. And I search for my headphones here, and there's really many headphones, and you can see which simulator it was captured on. I also suggest clicking on this all versus uniques if you use this, and then you choose the target profile and you can edit it if you want. And I suggest setting the max gain and the max loop to be maximum, so that you get it as accurately as possible without any restrictions. So the next tip I want to talk about is bass high pass automation. So if you ever stumbled upon a situation where you make a stereo bass sound but you want your sub to be mono, so you high pass the bass sound and make a new synth for the sub, then what you'll notice is that you can't get the high pass perfectly, because if you have a bass line on some higher notes, the fundamental will pass through, and on some lower notes you'll start cutting the overtones. So how to avoid that is either use Vital or automate the high pass to follow the notes so that the fundamental is always cut but the overtones aren't. Like this. And how you do it in Vital is you set high pass here on this drop down, and then you enter a value of 10, and that way it will always cut the fundamental out no matter what note you play. So the next tip is delay for space. So when I think about I want to add space to a sound, let's say it's a synth sound, I think about reverb, because that's what it does. It creates a decay of the sound, but there's so much you can do with delay as well. I know that delay and reverb are kind of the same thing, but this tip that I'm trying to teach is kind of an in-between. Well, to be honest, it's full on delay, but it's just like a different approach of delay than just repeating a note or a vocal, let's say, like what we have here. This is like a classic, or I would say like the most normal use of delay. But that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is, I'll first play the synth without the delay and let's hear what it sounds like. Now let's put delay on. You can hear how the purpose of it is not really to repeat what's in there, like here. Repeat this one little block of sound. This is not the purpose of the delay here. But you can hear how it adds a lot of dimension and space to the sound in a similar way that reverb does. But let's just make some kind of a typical sounding reverb like that and see how it sounds like with reverb. Not bad, right? At least not to my ears or my taste, but let's listen with delay once more to really hear the difference between those two. It's like it's not so washed out, it's not so messy, but it still adds the space. It's more like more subtle, even though it has a lot of mix, you can clearly hear it, but it's more delicate and more classic in a way. Like the rhythms that the delay play don't even, like I don't even think about them, they don't like make any sense to me. I just liked what it does, but I didn't think of the when I made this delay, there was a clear intent of the rhythm that this delay does. Just simple quarter notes, I think. But here I didn't think about that, how it adds rhythmically to the melody. I was just listening to what it does more of in a spatial context. Or yeah, obviously the rhythm that you choose for the delay matters for that space. It will sound different with other time options, but I'm sure you get the point. I won't go any deeper into this. The next tip I want to talk about is recording automation. So instead of, let's say I want to automate this filter now. Instead of going to tools, last week, create an automation clip. You can right click on the record button here and choose automation. Let's keep only that checked right now, and then you can simply hit record and play. Actually, you need a pattern. There's always at least one, but it's important to keep in mind that if we have something in this pattern, something when I record my automation, if this pattern is selected with the green box here, then that pattern will have the automation encoded in it. And what that means is if this pattern is the length of this, the automation will just repeat like this. So let's actually demonstrate this like so. So now I want to create a new pattern. Let's call this automation. And let's select this pattern here and let's record. There we go. So I just did this with the mouse, but if you have a MIDI controller, just click on the knob so that it registers it as the last thing you tweaked. Then go to tools and link to controller, and then you simply adjust whatever knob or controller you want, and there we go. The next tip is sub impact. What I mean by that is to have the sub off or quieter in some parts of the song to make other parts stand out. So to demonstrate this, let's add a sub here. It's with the same volume than here. Let's see how it sounds like. Now let's take it out. I think that's a neat trick. It's not really even a trick. It's something. I hope that you find it helpful. The next tip I want to talk about is harmonic oscillator plus sine oscillator. So basically it boosts the fundamental, and you can do it with EQ as well. Not so accurately, kind of similar to the previous tip about the high pass automation. So you can call this a tip about boosting the fundamental if you want, but I think there is also, like in the example I'm going to show, I think it's not just about boosting the fundamental, but actually where you do it. So if I add the oscillator here, it's at the very start of the processing. That's not even processing, like, well, whatever. Then it goes to all this, and it goes to the shaper, which is like Spire's kind of distortion thing. And the fact that the fundamental is boosted before it goes here, I'm quite sure it does something weird here. We can demonstrate it also without the shaper. I already did this and I noticed that this definitely has something to do with it. Let's first hear it as it is. I need to detach this. There we go. Now let's play it without the sign. Let's play it with just the sign. You can really hear how the combination of those two change things a lot. And to prove my point about the shaper, let's take it off and let's add some volume, because this adds a lot of volume. And let's do the same. Let's actually start with just this harmonic oscillator. Let's put the sign in. You can hear how it's not at all the same effect, at least in my opinion. And we can even try with the shaper. There's a little bit of high roll off, so we can even take that off, and it's still a really big difference. I'm honestly not sure about the science here. Like, I'm not sure if this actually how the shaper behaves with these different inputs. I'm actually not sure if this is just filtering what it does when I put the sign in, or what happens here, but you can hear what it sounds like, and it's just an easy thing to do. It's a little bit, you heard how it is different if I do it without the shaper. So here's another example. In this example there's no distortion, there's only a reverb, and I'm actually not sure if I would boost the fundamental after the reverb, if it would sound any different. I haven't tried that, but I think this is a good demo for the fundamental boost. So let's first hear it with just the harmonic oscillator. So we have a saw wave here. Now let's put the sign in. So it's been a long time since I recorded the last tip video, so it feels a little bit weird to go back into this, but I will try my best. So the next tip is adjusting and listening separately. And I will first show an example of what it means, and then we'll talk about it. So let's solo this lead. And let's say I want some reverb on it. So there are some cases where you can't even adjust while you are listening to the sound, and one example is in this plugin, the warp setting. So I can't make a decision on what sounds the best while I'm listening to the sound, so I have to set it to something at first and then listen to it. And then I need to set another setting and listen again to make the decision. So that's one example where you have to do it, but even if you don't have to do it, I think that there are some reasons why it can be beneficial. One of them being that you have less precision, so you don't have to or you can get really obsessive with finding the absolute perfection, and that can actually lead you down rails. How do I say this? If you get too stuck on finding the perfect setting for whatever parameter, it could be even volume, then you're kind of taking the joy out of the actual making music, and you're not really enjoying the sound. You're just trying to find the absolute perfection, or which might not even exist, or you are trying to find something that is the least annoying. You might easily get into that kind of mindset, or that kind of critical listening instead of enjoying the actual sounds you're hearing. If you have less precision on your adjustments, it can actually make you more connected to the music, because you are not so dialed into perfectionism, if that makes sense. The other point is that you can actually focus just purely on the listening what it sounds like, without having to if you adjust and listen at the same time, you are kind of thinking about two things. You are constantly processing which way I'm adjusting and how much I'm adjusting, and also listening to what it sounds like. So you're never really 100% focused on the listening if you do that. At least that's how it works for me. Yeah. I hope this was helpful. Okay, that's all the tips I have, at least for now, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you at least found something helpful in it. And yeah, see you next time, bye.